Welcome to Cosmic Divide, episode 57. I'm TMV, Champs is over, VCT 2025 is over, and I'm joined with a special guest. A man who used to not be a guest, but now is a guest. It's Mr. ElevatedSpeaks. How are you, Elevated? Post-champs? Are you in the post-champs, glory
Malaise.
days? Yeah, malaise, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I'm just very excited to watch Ascension because for me, I think Ascension is one of the more exciting parts of the year just because it's like, ooh, new stuff, right? It's not new agent, new map, whatever, new team. How about that? New drama, probably. So
yeah,
that starts in what, like 2 days for China, something like
yeah,
that?
starts
And then a couple
pretty
more
soon.
days.
Yeah, pretty soon for China. They always love just like, let's get this over with. China, for whatever reason, they're just like, let's just go. Don't care about anything else. Don't care. I mean, like, imagine if XLG and DRG had finished like 3rd and 4th in champs, and whoever came 4th had to play in Ascension like a week after. Like, imagine that happened.
Yeah. That'd be pretty brutal.
That would be very, very brutal indeed. But yeah, we got Ascension coming up, and as you say, and what's interesting about Ascension this year, well, we'll get to this later in the podcast about, this might be the last Ascension, potentially.
Yep.
But what's interesting about this year is that there's going to be, each Ascension is kind of have its own flavor in a way, because like in Pacific, you've got the 2 tier 1 teams who are there. In China, as we mentioned, you've got, it's DRG, right, who are having to play in it, so it's like them coming off the back of playing in champs, having to defend their spot. And then in EMEA and in America, well, in Americas, G2 have already secured their spot, so in Americas it's open, and EMEA it's open as well. So interesting. In EMEA also, weird stuff going on. We got something to talk about there as well. But yes, let's first start talking about champs though, because champs happened, for those of you who don't know, and the winners, as everyone, I think me and Elevate predicted this right at the start of the tournament as well. NRG managed to win the tournament, just as everyone predicted. Well, yeah, this is the thing. In fact, let's actually start there. Is this more or less surprising than EDG winning it last year?
I mean, I guess it depends on what context you're looking at the season, right? Because if we're looking at Energy starting the season and winning champs, I would say it's probably Energy, considering they were like de facto dead, kicking their coach. Okay, their roster's trash, nothing's working, everything, like blow up the team, go next for 2026. EDG obviously had just always been a solid team regionally and had never really put it together internationally. So yeah, I think you kind of have to give it to Energy as being the most surprising champs winner, maybe since Ascend.
I would even argue,
or EG, or EG.
No,
EG,
no,
rather.
but EG like had a run up to it. If EDG would have won Toronto, or if EG hadn't made champ, which is weird because EG easily couldn't have made champs if the 100 Thieves won that game and didn't get knifed by an assistant coach, and then they wouldn't have made champs. And imagine they do just then turn up to champs and all that good and win champs. Like, that probably would have been more surprising. But NRG, it is kind of, I think NRG are the most surprising.
They didn't make any tournaments. They didn't show
any, they never made a tournament.
Like until playoffs of stage 2, basically.
Yeah, I mean, like it was a remarkable run because EDG, at least, I mean, so EDG was a shock, I think, because it was a Chinese team. But if there had been a team that wasn't from China but was from one of the other 3 regions that had done what EDG had done, where they consistently made tournaments but maybe underperformed at them, but then went on a run and won champs, I don't think that would have been that shocking to people. I think it was just the fact that EDG were from China. But for NRG, I mean, it really has somewhat come out of nowhere, and it wasn't like they kind of scraped through it either. They went through the uppers. I think were the clear,
they didn't lose any series the whole time.
Were the clear best team, and ended up winning it. In fact, actually, I'm going to swap the order around a bit because we're kind of here already, which is my kind of thought, and maybe this is a leading question, but my kind of thought with this tournament at champs has been that NRG were really the only team to play at their peak. Most tournaments, I would say, have both grand finalists manage to make their peak. And then some tournaments, I think, even have a third team, maybe even a fourth team. Like, for instance, if you take Toronto, I think both Paper Rex, I think Fnatic were probably playing better at Toronto than they were at Champs overall. And I think that Wolves hit their peak, right? Obviously, Wolves' peak isn't like super high, but they definitely hit their peak as well during that tournament. So you had kind of 3 teams that hit their peak. I would argue for Champs that really only NRG hit their peak. Am I wrong, Mr. Elevated?
I would say yeah, because I would also maybe give MiBR and DRX as peaking at the right time. It's like basically all the teams you didn't expect kind of hit their peak, and that allowed them to go much further than the teams that you did expect to play well. NRG's peak just happened to be higher than MiBR and DRX because I think both of those teams have like fundamental issues with their teams that allow them to get far, but not far enough, right? Whereas Energy kind of had like their peak was a championship level team, which is that they had, good ideas, good prep, solid leadership, good ideas, a good read on the meta, etc. And I think contrast that with a team like MiBR, which I think their peak in 2 years with this roster might be like winning champions or something like that. But currently, I think they just have too much inexperience with like the 3 rookies that they had. I guess 4 rookies essentially in Ospas, right? I mean, not actual rookies, but because like Artisan played last year or whatever. But I wouldn't say that MiBR's players were ready, but I think they had, the star power, they had the aim, they had good reads, they had good meta stuff, but they just were too inexperienced as a team. Whereas you look at NRG and they're like, okay, we've got a former champions winner. We've got Sam, who's been in the scene and Counter-Strike pro. We've got Bonkar, who's been a pro in other games, played professionally in this game as well. I think it's just like a little bit different as far as those 2 teams. But yeah, if we're looking at like G2, Heretics, Paper X, even Fnatic, I think none of those teams really played their best. Or maybe they played as well as they could have. Like they played their best, quote unquote, but it wasn't like the peak of what the team could be. Yeah.
I'm willing to kind of allow MiBR. I think that that's fair when it comes to MiBR and saying that, they did a lot better than people expected. They very well could have, this, if you're asking NRG, obviously the way the grand final went was a bit strange, but in terms of like someone giving them a test from start to finish, like this was the game that NRG probably, came the closest to losing overall. They beat them in overtime. The 2 round maps that they won were in overtime, and they got slapped on the map that they lost, NRG. So, this was definitely a game that they easily could have lost and sent them to the lowers. So I'm willing to grant you MiBR. My problem with DRX and saying that they reached their peak is I felt like for DRX, the problem that they had was that at different points in the tournament, different players started playing well, but then as soon as one would play well, the other wouldn't. So like Flashback started off the tournament amazing, and Hyunmin was a little quieter, and then towards the end of it, it was flipped, and Hyunmin was playing amazing, but then Flashback was quieter, and Mako started really well, and then kind of fell off. Like, I just felt like if they could have, literally all locked in and, all started playing their best, I think they could have won this tournament quite easily, to be honest. Had they, all reached that ceiling at the same time. That would be my argument against DRX, but I'm not. It's fair enough to say that potentially, maybe you're right. Maybe it's the fact that the best teams, who we expected to be good, none of them managed to reach their ceiling. So we ended up with, MiBR doing well and DRX doing well and NRG winning it, of course. So yeah, maybe that is the case. One thing also I want to talk about though, in terms of this tournament, is when we were going from, kind of the first part of playoffs and then there was the break to the final 4. At the time in that break, there was a big discussion about, is this one of the best tournaments, that we've seen? Is this the best tournament? Because at that point, like all of these games, it felt like were 2-1s, tense moments, maybe not all close maps, but interesting maps. And I mean, like look here, right? All of the lowers is 2-1. So these games that like mean the most, it was like every game is 2-1. We talked about this MiBR game, right? It was super close on 2 of the maps. You got Fnatic versus PaperX. You had the Doma game, right, which was super entertaining for like these maps ended up not being that close, but it was entertaining because it was like, oh my god, Doma's playing and they're beating PaperX, right?
Yeah.
So now that we've seen the Final Four, which I think was a little underwhelming for some of the games, and then it looked like it was going to be super underwhelming grand final, but then turned out not to be. Where is your take on this Elevate now as Champs 25 and you look at it all? How would you rate this tournament?
I mean, I think it probably is the best tournament that I've watched. Just because even the group stage was interesting. Even the group stage had intrigue and interesting storylines and upsets and close games. I think, yeah, I mean, I think it really kind of has to be up there. I think I don't know. I mean, I think it was Tom Biz maybe put out a tweet that was just like, I don't know what Valorant did, but somehow it's just been a blessed esport where like there's always good storylines. There's always a good Cinderella run. There's always good intrigue and stuff like that. And I really do feel like that's just the case. And I think that this tournament kind of took it up a little bit. G2 losing early, being in the group with Heretics.
Mm-hmm.
This is a team that everybody's kind of like, oh, they're probably going to win. It's either they're going to be them or PaperX. We have who obviously Energy beating EDG, former champs. That was like a very, very interesting close series. I think maybe the only thing that would have been a little bit more interesting if EDG had made it a little bit deeper in the tournament, just because it's like I always love like the former champs kind of trying to defend their title, and having them go out early made it a little bit less interesting in that sense. But DRX going on a run, I mean, just like so many tournament favorites struggling early, some having resurgences, the rise of like the Giants and the MiBRs and obviously Energy made a lot of really interesting stuff. And then you get to the bracket stage and you've got like almost flip-flopped, right? You've got G2 coming in as a second seed. You've got like Heretics going down to the lowers early, and so then the lower bracket just becomes this insane like murderer's row of teams. So yeah, I was definitely a little bit worried. I think if Fnatic hadn't managed to come back from 11-1 or 1-11 rather, and they'd just gotten blown out 3-0 in the grand finals, I probably would look at this a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But as Fnatic tends to do, they tended to save the narrative and make sure that we all remember this tournament in like a really strong light.
Yeah, I think that when I'm looking back at this tournament, this ended up being kind of almost like, I think particularly if you've been in Valorant for a while, like if you have been watching Valorant since pre-franchising, this was even better for you, because you had so many, like if you think about the teams that ended up in the top 4, you got DRX, who obviously are like this team that's been around forever. You got PaperX, who obviously have been around, forever. You got Fnatic, who, been around forever. And then you've got NRG. But the thing that's interesting about NRG is, obviously the initial NRG was the Optic team, right? It was the Optic to NRG. Right. And then obviously, they've changed a lot since then.
It's like the 4 original teams.
Yeah, but within that is like a narrative wrapped up of like, I mean, you think of like Optic, you think NRG, you think FNS, right? Like FNS is the kind of, central figure to it all. And then this is they don't, finally get rid of FNS essentially. And now they're still there, right? So it is this kind of old quarterback. And then on top of that, you've got Aspas still, with MiBR going on a deep run. It was like such a it's already we went back to 2022 with the teams that are like making it deep and like who you expect and stuff like that. It was quite interesting from that perspective. The tournament for me that I always say is my favorite tournament, this is because I'm completely biased because it was the first one that I fully co-streamed, was Copenhagen.
Yeah.
Copenhagen was great, mainly thanks to one team. And because I went back and I just took a look at it. And that's Leviathan. Because Leviathan, in their 3 games that they played in playoffs, were all 2-1. And every game, this game was insane. And then they went and played against Xset and played on Haven, and it was insane. That's the Spike drop it in
Right.
heaven game. That's that
Yeah,
one.
this was like Takalia
Yeah,
debut
and
time,
then they
right?
played
Yeah.
Fnatic on Bind, and this is the Enzo Stixit game in OT.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
back to back to back, they played their last map on all of these games. All went map 3. All ended with only winning by 2 rounds. Whoever won it had insane moments in all of them, and Lev really like made an absolute feast of that tournament. And then you had kind of like, you had the FPX lower bracket run when Sugetsu got there. You had a good final with FPX versus PaperX. It was going to be a new winner. It was the first time that an APAC team was in the grand final. Like, there was a lot of cool things going on in that tournament. So I always liked it. But I do think that the fact that it's a champs, right, obviously elevates it. But I think the reason that it elevates it, elevated. The reason that it elevates it is because, like, for teams like G2 or Heretics, it's like, it's over. Your season is over. I think that that's what matters about champs. It's not even the fact that, like, oh, it's champs and there's a slightly bigger prize pool and they have this cool trophy and it's, that, and they do make a big show and dance of it. I think the main thing that makes it better is it's not like when you lose in the second Masters and you've got a whole other split and you've got champs to look forward to potentially, and it's like, oh, we could still do something. It's like, no, you're done. G2, failure. Like, they won all 3 regional trophies, but their year overall is probably, they're going to look at it, or at least I think they should, as somewhat of a failure because they didn't win an international. Am I wrong?
Yeah. No, I think that's fair, and I think that's why for me, I know that you somewhat disagree. I will always put the champs trophy above the other ones, just because it is technically like the biggest tournament, right? Monetarily, everything, like stakes wise, spectacle, it is the biggest tournament. And if you get knocked out of it, you are on vacation or out of a job or whatever, like immediately afterwards. And so I think that really kind of puts it in a tier above the Masters tournaments. And that's why I tend to look at it as like the highest pressure tournament. And that's why I'm so impressed at how interesting this tournament was. Because I think almost every tournament we usually have at least one group that kind of disappoints. We usually have at least a couple matches early on in the bracket stage and playoffs that are just like 2-0 stomps. And I really feel like almost every single game that I watched this tournament, I was like pretty invested in. So I think, yeah, for me, it's probably the most interesting tournament that I watched. And part of that could be because I have like a slightly different perspective now, having coached in the league for a year, and so like I have like a bit of a emotional connection to like what the coaches and the players are going through, and I know how intense it is and how crazy it is, and like you know all the extra stuff that goes on behind the scenes. So that maybe made me appreciate it a little bit more as well.
Well, let's talk a little more about that, because now I'm intrigued. Like, what give me some examples of like things that you're feeling when you're seeing NRG throw an 11-1 lead on Abyss. Like, what, how do you think Bonkar is feeling in that moment? Like, what's going through his head? What's going through the Fnatic coach's head when they're 11-1 down and about to lose?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like they showed a little bit of like a replay package of the Fnatic coaches after
Yeah.
that comeback, and the assistant coach Scott, I think his name is, was like, let's just give them every bit of energy that we have, like just and that's literally all you can do when you're getting stomped. Like you have to essentially pick 2 paths. One is like be as motivational as possible, as positive as possible, or 2, like yell at them and hope that they get angry enough to come back. Like those are kind of your 2 paths, right? Um, slash like challenge them. Like, hey, do you guys want to be embarrassed or not? Because like that's what's happening. You guys are being embarrassed, and it's up to you to figure it out. And so that's definitely a very tough situation to be in. When you're being come back on, it also feels terrible because it's like you can see the team trying to come up with solutions. And part of it is like, as a coach, you call your timeout, you give them a solution, it doesn't work, whether because they don't listen to you, they don't execute it correctly, or because your solution is bad. You call another timeout, that doesn't work, and then you're literally just sitting there just being like, well, my job is done for now. And I'm just going to continue trying to read the game and hope that we get to a point where I can impact it again. But yeah, it really is just a total emotional roller coaster the whole time. Like, every single round is like, oh my God, why are we doing this? Okay, great. We fixed it. Okay. Oh God, what's happening? Like, so much of it is just totally out of your hands. And as much prep as you can do, and as prepared as you can feel, sometimes on the day of the match, um, it doesn't even matter. Like, I feel like the vast majority of the games that I coached were like, I feel very prepared. I think we've prepared correctly. And then on the day of the match, it's just like, well, is our energy there? Are we communicating well enough? No? Okay. Well, it literally doesn't matter what strategies we're running. We need to actually just play as a team. Right.
Mm.
And that's like what ends up being necessary most of the time. And that's kind of why, it's kind of why energy won. Cause like, you listen to the post-match interview with Mata and everybody. It's like, how does it feel to be the best player or whatever? It was all my team. How did you guys win, Ethan? Just full trust for the team. Brock, what does it feel like to be, the MVP of the tournament? It was my team setting me up. Like that is the answer, right? It's about the team. You can't have selfish people if you want to be a champion.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. And what will last with me from this tournament, I think most of all, is when NRG played Giants, and I think that this is really when it flipped, because if you look at NRG's run, like of them going through this tournament, they I mean, I've mentioned this before, but they kind of squeaked through groups, right? They actually lost more rounds in groups than they won, right? So they kind of like, they won, they won by 4 rounds against EDG. They won by 4 rounds here against DRX and got stomped on the map that they lost. It was really this Giants game where I think something changed. And I did a VOD review of this Haven, and I made a video about it. And like, during the video, I was full of praise for them on this Haven, and how well they played and all of that. But one thing that I think, like, looking back, that I should have like, this was a game that, like, I honestly can't remember because I've done, anytime there's a 13-0, I'll make a video about it, pretty much. And so I've seen, I've seen what stomps generally look like. This game was kind of unique, or this map was kind of unique, because I can't remember a time when if you go back and watch this VOD, it's like everything goes right. Like, everything that NRG do, it's like they have the perfect strat called, like, for every round. It feels like anything that they choose to do, like, whatever bit of, like, oh, we've got this anti-strat, they might do this, well, Giants do it. And they do whatever their anti-strat is, and it works perfectly, and it works, right? And it's just like everything just came about to where it's like, this was more, I mean, and this is how you end up with someone going 18-1, right? Because, like, everything is going right. There's like, everything is there, and obviously they're playing extremely well. And looking back at this, it's like, because at the time they beat Giants, and then Giants went out, pretty early on, and it's like, oh, well, Giants just weren't very good. But, like, now with the hindsight of what NRG did after, like, and looking back at what I saw from that game, it's like, that to me was the moment when NRG kind of started to become the NRG that could actually win champs, rather than, just a team that was going to finish, 4th.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple other thoughts on this match in particular. Giants fucking melted. Like, they
did melt.
Completely melted. But this is gonna make people probably kind of mad for me to say this, but there's a lot of luck in Valorant. Like, there is a lot of luck. There's a lot of making your own luck, but there's a lot of luck in Valorant. And like you're saying, they call the strat that just happens to perfectly counter the strat that Giants is calling. Maybe part of that is prep, because they know that Giants likes to run this in certain situations. That's totally fine. But there's also a chance that Giants goes off script, right? And there's nothing worse in this game as a team than feeling like every single time that you do a strat, the exact wrong thing is happening, right? Every time that you push, they're not there. Every single time that you go for like a lurk, they're spamming this. They haven't spammed in 5 rounds. You go for a lurk, they spam, they kill you, the lurk is dead, right? These types of things can happen. And definitely on this map, there was a lot of situations where it's just like exactly what you're saying. They would always be in the right spot. All of their plays would work correctly. All of their fakes would be bought. All of their spams were hitting. All of their shots were hitting, And so like I think probably initially Giants was playing relatively well, but sometimes if like the wrong thing happens 5 rounds in a row, then boom, your mental's gone, and then you like fully melt, which is I think kind of what happened to Giants. And obviously you have to be playing well to capitalize on all of those mistakes and to be making the right read at the right time and to be calling the right strat at the right time. There is like a huge element of, flow state and like all of this stuff happening, but there's also definitely luck involved. And that's just the reality of the game.
Yeah. No, yeah. 100%. 100%.
And also one last thing, sorry, is that, and when you start getting lucky, if you're a good team, you will start playing more confidently, not too confidently. But and I think that's kind of the thing with energy is like the things were starting to go right. They started playing more confidently, which gives them more opportunities to do the right thing and to get lucky and to have that momentum build. But then they didn't overstep, right? And so they had that real sweet spot where like they rode the momentum, but they didn't get too confident. But when you are riding that momentum, it does give you more and more and more opportunities for things to go right. So it's like a very interesting balance of like playing well, getting more opportunities, getting a little lucky, and then like making sure that you don't overdo it to the point where you test your luck too much and then all of a sudden you throw the game away, right?
Yep, 100%. Let's move on to the next thing I want to talk about with this tournament. Which is always fun to take a look at a tournament at a certain point at the end and look back at what happened. Let's take a look at the meta. Okay, so here, if you could see that, are the pick rates of the agents for champs. You got Omen at the top at 80%. That's kind of been, roughly around what Omen has been for a very long time. I still will stand on this plinth and say that the paranoia is not something that should exist in its current state in the game and doesn't make sense in this game considering all the other abilities. And now you've also, which we'll get to as well in a second, released an agent that can counter a lot of utility but not the paranoia, crucially.
Really he gets nearsighted by the paranoia in ult?
Oh, not in ult. I meant just the little orb thing doesn't destroy it.
Okay.
So the orb does nothing. Yeah, the ult can't everything. There is nothing that the ult can't do.
Okay.
But the paranoia, it goes past that little orb and the orb doesn't give a shit. Then you got Sova and Fade, obviously, making up almost, combined 100%, which is what we've kind of come to expect at this juncture. At least like not one of them is dominating. At least there is kind of like a bit of a, duality there. I personally am kind of hoping that they release a third one, to be honest, so that we get kind of a third recon agent as something else to maybe think about and consider on certain maps that, might be a bit different in other ways. I think would be good, right? Because then you've got more diversity and it might be make certain combos and stuff a bit interesting. Then you've got Yoru, and let's start the discussion really here, because of course Yoru has really been the one that's the change, right? He's been kind of the steady riser, throughout the year, and from even towards the back end of 2024 into this year, like we've seen a large rise in Yoru. But what is interesting, and again I'm interested in your take on this, is that NRG only played Yoru on one map, and we've also seen a lot of double duelist. NRG didn't play double duelist at all. So what do you think about that? Where I don't think either of us think that Yoru is not a good agent, but what do you think about the fact that NRG was still able to win this tournament despite the fact that they didn't really lean into double duelist and didn't really play that much Yoru.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple of things. Another thing to think about is T1 won a tournament not leaning into the Teo meta,
Yep.
right? Energy won a tournament not leaning into the Yoru meta. I think that right there is sort of a whole other conversation about how to approach the meta. I think there's, and we saw it this tournament as well with some of the upsets early and DRX's rise. Like when you come in with a unique idea, it gives you a big advantage because the more reps teams have practicing against strategies, the easier it is to play against them. And this is why a lot of teams don't like playing Ascent, because teams have had a million reps against the Ascent comp. And obviously things have changed a little bit, but the map plays very similar and there's a lot of very similar agents. It's why I've always said that copying other team strategies is generally a bad idea. It can get you to a certain level, but you will never be the best at the map if you copy somebody else, unless you are like super genius, you take all their stuff and then you improve on it. But the vast majority of the strategies that we see are made by a very few teams because they are the ones that consistently innovate. And it's always like the same teams, right? Fnatic had the Lotus comp, Fnatic had the Haven comp, G2 had their comps, Gen G had their comps, DRX had their comps, and everybody tends to kind of copy them. This year, there was a little bit more diversity. And a lot of times it's the teams that had the unique stuff that were winning. I think, for example, Energy. This is one thing Energy did very, very well, is that they leaned into what they were good at. They put Brock on Sova Odin on every map that they could. They put Ethan on KO on every map that they could, even maps that people were like, KO on Corrode, what the fuck is this? Where's your Viper? Who cares? Put him on KO because he's one of the best KOs in the world. And I really think that doing the unique stuff is the key to being good at this game. I've believed that since the very beginning, and I continue to believe that, and I think that this has proved that. Now, as far as Yoru goes, I think it is really kind of important to understand the concept of a hybrid agent, because Yoru is an initiator / duelist. He is. That's what he is. Omen is a duelist / smoker. Okay. So when you look at this meta and you've got the top 5 agents being Omen, Sova, Yoru, Viper, Fade, what you have is double smokes. You have double initiator, because I'm counting Yoru as an initiator, or you could say Yoru plus Omen. They both have initiator potential. You have double initiator because you've got basically every comp is going to have a flash plus a recon. And then you've got, a sentinel, because Viper is a sentinel as far as all things are like concerned. Viper is a sentinel that also has smokes. So you still kind of have like the comp that everybody has always been running forever, which is you got to have recon, you got to have smokes, you got to have some flashes, and you got to have the ability to initiate fights. And gap close. Omen, Yoru both can gap close. So all those elements that make a good comp are there. And I think that I'm kind of like going off on a tangent now. I can't exactly remember what your original question is, but double duelist you also mentioned. So I'll just kind of, we'll do the weave. We're going to weave into the double duelist here. And I think double duelist was good on certain maps for certain teams. I think it was massively overrated. We had like a lot of people saying, oh, double duelist is the best thing you can be doing. You got to be doing double duelist. It's the best thing you can be doing. Many people are saying double duelist is the best thing you got to be doing. And the reality is that certain teams were built for double duelist. Certain maps favor a double duelist style. Certain metas favor a double duelist style. And so it's definitely something you can be doing, but not something you have to be doing.
I think you saw that with DRX. DRX, created their own kind of double duelist that was kind of separate from what everyone else was doing. But even within that, there was certain maps where it worked really well, and there were other maps where, like their Haven defense side, they just couldn't figure it out. They just couldn't make it work. They couldn't defend on Haven. Their Lotus, they literally couldn't figure out Lotus. They didn't know how to make it work. So yeah, I'm totally with you that, like, it can work, you know, in certain circumstances. DRX proved that on certain maps it can work, but they also, I think, proved that in certain maps or sides of maps, like it just they just couldn't do it. There just wasn't a good answer. They didn't have enough answers for certain maps or sides.
Yeah, and man, another thing about the meta is just like I I really feel like the highest level of Valorant that you could see is one where a team comes in with one comp one day, has a totally different comp the next day, totally different comp the next day. I don't know how feasible that is, just because there is like a certain level of you must have reps and stuff like this. But when you come in with, you know, Waylay Yoru, and it's like, what the hell is this? How do I deal
Yeah,
with this? And then the next time you play them, they've got 3 Sentinels, and you're like, where are their like, how do we play defense?
yeah,
Right? How do we play attack against this? And being able to just switch that stuff up really makes it hard for teams, because and that's one of like maybe the knocks against Fnatic is like, bro, they're still playing Killjoy, Viper, Omen on Lotus. Like, we know everything that's happening. I don't even have to watch VODs at this point. I can watch VODs from 2023 and they're still doing the same shit, right?
mm,
But if all of a sudden Alfier is on, I don't know, a chamber on that map, and Boaster's on an Astra, and Chronicles on something else, like, then whatever, like, then all of a sudden now your brain is like, instead of just being like pattern recognition, you're just like a little bit panicked. Okay, what does this mean? How do these agents work together? I don't know what I'm supposed to be looking for now. And I think that element is still something that is not appreciated enough about the game. And I really do think that, like, we're probably going to end in a place eventually where you see a comp a couple of times and then it's gone. Or at the very least, it'll be there for like an event, maybe half an event, and then it's got to change. And Riot's already kind of pushing us in that direction with like the cadence of the patches and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I could talk about the meta in this game for like a million years.
Well, let's carry on. We don't have to stop there. We can take a trip down further on the agents to talk about some of the more interesting dynamics coming up here. Again, Viper. Look, I've been banging the Viper drum for an extremely long time at this point. Viper's good. And as long as the wall exists, Viper will probably always be a pretty good pick.
Yeah, I don't know if, obviously you're not on Twitter, so you didn't see my
No.
tweet, but I have a tweet that's going viral right now, just because I posted the metas for the last 5 years at Champions,
Mm,
and Viper is the only agent that's been top 5 for the last 5 years. Every other agent has been there maximum 2 or 3 times. Sova's been there 3 times, I think. Owen's been there
yeah.
twice. Viper's been there all 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me laugh thinking about like 2022 Viper, just how absurdly broken the Viper was in 2022. I mean,
Yeah,
just
and the
think of all the
interesting
nerfs.
part is she's always been in like the 43 to 50%
Yeah,
range. Like,
but like
it's like it's
now,
never it's never been like 70. It's always just been in
if
like
you
the 50s.
gave 2022 Viper to the teams now, it would be
Yeah.
100%. There would be no way you would never run Viper on every single map every time
Yeah.
you could, because
Yeah.
I mean
Picking up
that's
the
ridiculous.
orb,
Yeah.
the decay. Yeah.
The
It's
fuel,
crazy.
putting both up at
The
the same
double
time, no
mollies.
fuel, double mollies, like
Yeah.
unbelievable, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Then you got Fade. Then Vice and Cypher actually tied on 30%. But let's talk about Waylay as the next agent, because obviously Waylay. When did Waylay come out? After Bangkok is when Waylay came out, right?
Yeah, I think came out like at Bangkok announced because it
Yeah.
was a Thai agent in Thailand. Yeah.
So came out during that. Obviously, like barely anyone played it during stage one. Barely really anyone played it during Toronto, to my recollection. During
Yep.
stage two, we started to see a bit of a shift. Teams started picking it up a little bit more, and then gradually, as we got kind of through into champs, we saw teams like DRX, run it a lot. NRG run it a little bit as well, and we saw a variety of teams run it, somewhat. We're mostly on Corrode as the most popular map, but you could see here like there is some pick rate on literally every single map, although that's probably somewhat due to DRX.
It is DRX.
Yeah. What do you think about the the Waylay direction? Is this something that, you know, obviously as you were coaching and during stage 2 and stuff, were you looking at like Waylay as a viable pick? Do you think the teams were, you know, wrong to pick it? Is it was what do you think?
So, I mean, when we first started scrimming teams that were playing Waylay, it was terrible.
Yeah,
Like, it was really
the
bad.
early Waylay was
Um,
pretty rough.
yeah, it was just people trying to do like jet entries without a smoke to hide in and just
Yeah,
feeding, essentially.
yeah.
Um, I also think that still, as is generally the case, people don't understand their utility that well. Like,
Mm,
the ult use is still terrible most of the
mm,
time.
Even
But
DRX, yeah.
I do think that people I think what DRX kind of realized is an interesting thing that is going to lead me to another tangent in a second. But the way that they have figured out, okay, well, the best way that we have figured out to use her is for her to essentially be a drone. Like, she goes in, checks 10 angles, recalls instantly, and then the rest of the team actually enters afterwards. And I think
Hmm.
that's kind of a cool way to use it. I don't think it's the only way, because I think obviously on defense, then you can basically play her like a jet, which is cool. So you kind of get two different styles. Um, it almost makes me wonder the way that DRX played it. Should they just have an initiator player instead of Hyunmin play Waylay? Because
Mm,
like the whole point of Hyunmin going in was dash in, saturate, recall.
yeah,
I'm not actually entering, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's just
so
he is,
yeah, it's
yeah,
just
just a utility thrower and like guaranteeing that it hits. Yeah,
right. And
that's
so
all he
then,
is.
would you rather just have Bane play Waylay, just dash in, drone for the team, and then have
Yeah,
Hyunmin play, I don't know, some other duelist, and then Flashback plays
yeah,
Yoru, and then you actually have like two duelists? I don't know, just like a random tangent thought. But I also think that Waylay did something fairly unique in that the combination of Yoru plus Waylay essentially made Sentinels like useless. And really was like the combo that kind of broke Vice, because
mm,
Vice, whether people have realized it or not, I think Riot has done a pretty good job of sort of like tapering Vice's uh like oppressiveness by quickly being on top of some of the nerfs and stuff. But Vice is oppressive as fuck still. Like,
yeah. I'm totally
just
with you.
just like with like when Astra had the instant suck, etc. Like, you have to completely change how you play the game when Vice
Yeah,
is on the map, because if you don't find the wall, then you cannot actually like play the game correctly, because either you're giving the other team full information for free for like the entire round, or if you want to pivot to the Vice site and you haven't baited the wall, you could potentially just lose the round on time or whatever. And so it becomes a mini game of, where is Vice's wall? How do we find Vice's wall? And sometimes you're seeing teams literally like invest a drone in the beginning of the round to just go scout where the wall is and then play the rest of the round accordingly. And I think that with the Waylay and the Yoru on the same team, it finally gave teams sort of like an answer device where they can just disrespect the Vice. Because you can either, trip the wall instantly with the clone early, you can dash past the wall and recall back through. Um, it just gives it a lot more tools for dealing with the wall, which has been probably the most problematic ability in the game for the entire year. Um, so yeah, I think that is sort of interesting, and it just allows like the meta to continue to evolve, because now it's like, well, if teams are going to go heavy into your Waylay, then we probably shouldn't play Vice anymore. We
mm,
should just be playing, insert something else, right? And maybe that answer is don't play any Sentinels, because
yeah.
if they just have two characters that can totally
Zippy
disregard all
zap,
of our
yeah,
Sentinel utility, then maybe we should just play initiators, because then we can just fight the duelists with our initiator utility. And because we're initiators, we have more fighting utility than the duelists do. And we can just use our initiators to like info cycle to kind of make up for the fact that we don't have passive information. So it
yeah,
just kind of like forces the meta to continue to evolve. And obviously things are going to change as Riot introduces another patch and new agents and all this shit. But it is kind of an interesting way to deal with what was a very big part of the meta for the entire year.
yeah. I mean, I'm totally with you, and I think, and certain teams I think are totally with us as well. Like, you know, G2 and Paper X, they very much leaned into Vice. right? Like
Yeah.
if they are playing there is no other Sentinel for them, pretty much. Like if they're playing a Sentinel, okay, maybe there's a Chamber in there every so often, but like, you know, it's Vice. They want to play Vice as like if that is a Sentinel that they're playing, and I'm totally with you and them. I still think that like in a vacuum, like the Vice wall and the Thorn still last too long, like compared to like other, you know, stuff that's in the game. Like if you look at Killjoy stuff versus like Vice stuff, like I mean, you talk about Fnatic on Lotus, it's like, yeah, everyone moved to Vice because if you want to hold C, just put Vice wall down with a Thorn, and then like you get stole for donkeys.
Yeah, I think if you're playing Killjoy at this point, you're trolling.
Yeah.
Unless the other team is running like an ISO, in which case Killjoy is pretty good, or if they're running something that can't scale past the Killjoy utility, in which case, you know, yeah, there's so many different like interactions and things, and it really is like open season at this point. But you have to kind of understand, like, if most teams are doing this, then we need to immediately find like the route around what they're doing, and that's how the game is going. That's how it's going to be played, like in the future.
I'll just give my quick thoughts on Waylay, because I've given quite a few thoughts on Waylay before. When DRX, I can't remember, it probably was at the start of this tournament. Again, I made a video about that. Like when it was on Bind, I remember it quite clearly. It was the first time they went B long. They had Hyunmin double dash up, you know, and it was like the first time that we saw someone double dash, saturate, and then recall. Right, and then someone goes in and kills them all. It was like a eureka moment for the agent, I think, because before that, like everyone had just double dashed and come back, and it's like, okay, now you just don't have any util, like, and now you're just sat back there still, and no one, and I'm alive, and it's fine. Whereas when DRX did that, and it was just like, oh yeah, that obviously makes sense, and yeah, you do have the trade off of like, you know, if you do that to a Yoru and they TP away, well, now your Waylay has no util left, right? Like there is a trade-off if you hit the wrong agent with that saturate, you know, and they still live. It's not great, but like I do think that was a kind of eureka moment for the agent. But I still think my point still stands of like we still saw some bad Waylays in this tournament, because I think if you haven't put the time into mastering those little skills, then it's still not gonna be that great, right? Like it's not. I think the thing is, and a lot of duelist players have perhaps gotten used to, you know, like, you know, you've gotten used to Yoru and just being able to press E and get all the way out, right? They're used to playing, you know, Neon and having a super fucking insane slide that, you know, makes no fucking sense and gives you an instant advantage in any gunfight you take. You know, you've got old Jet, of course, where they used to just instant dashing out and stuff. Like, I think that some duelist players have gotten used to that, and Waylay, like you still have seen during this tournament, like they press E and they go back a yard and die, right? They and it's like, what? My signature ability didn't just instantly save me? Like, what? Like, I still think there was a bit of that for some people, but for those who put in the time, like DRX, or even NRG, right? NRG have been playing it on Corrode. I went back and looked.
I would say
they played
Aspas as well.
Aspas did a good job as well, yeah. But, like, NRG were playing it in week 2. They played it in week 2 against Loud. Their Corrode comp has stayed the same throughout, right? So they, like, you know, they got the reps in, particularly on that map of, you know, Matter playing Waylay. So that's my thoughts on that. I don't think we need to talk too much. There is maybe one little other thing that I wanted to talk about, which is we had 2 agents that were buffed coming into champs, which was Sage and Chamber. And, you know, perhaps me in my hopeful world was hoping that, you know, oh, that will mean that these agents, you know, are gonna see some play, and they did see some play. You know, it's not like they had a 0% pick rate, but, you know, still both below 10%. And I think particularly in Chamber's case, and we'll get to this later on as well, there's a new agent that, you know, might make him Chamber, somewhat redundant. Let's put it that way. But talk to me, what obviously Icebox rotated for Sage, so that was that was obviously gonna have a pretty negative impact. Do you still think that they're, well, I mean, based off what you said about Chamber, I think we could put him to one side. But with Sage and Deadlock, really, because we did see quite a bit of Deadlock picks earlier on, but only 6% now, you know, a bit more of a decline. Do you think we're just going to revert back to, like, that sort of agent, the barrier sentinels, as I call them, is just not really, like, a super viable archetype for, like, high-level play again? Or do you still think there's space for them?
Yeah, I think there's still space for them, but I think they've just been kind of like meta owned, like especially Deadlock. A huge part of Deadlock's importance in meta is to make you afraid of taking mains, because there could always be like a nade, like a gravnet combo.
Mm-hmm.
But if everybody's playing Yoru, then your gravnet has zero value. And so like, and honestly, like my team we experienced this during stage 1, maybe stage 1 or stage 2. I think it was stage 1. Yeah. I remember specifically, we were playing, God, who were we playing? Maybe it was DRX, and they were playing Jet, Yoru, Omen. And we set up a Teo deadlock combo trap as like something that had worked very well for us in practice. And then we hadn't played this like double duelist plus an Omen, and we set up a trap.
I think I found the game.
We used all of our utility, and all 3 characters just teleported out. And I was like, our comp is fucked. Like, we can't play this because our deadlock actually has 0 value. And so like that's kind of the problem with deadlock right now, is that when the other agents that you're trying to catch, and teams have gotten a lot better at using the Yoru to diffuse the traps, right? You send the Yoru in by himself.
Yeah.
He gets netted, he gets paranoid, he gets stunned, and he's out. And now the other team has no utility to stop, like the secondary hit. And so I think for Deadlock,
You're making me flashback. I just remember fucking, I think it was Heretics playing Yoru on Icebox, and the way they played it annoyed me so much, because I was like, why aren't you just sending him as the lurk on one side, and if they reclear, you just TP back to the other side? Like, it's so obvious. And they weren't, and they would never do it, and it just used to fucking irk me every round. I'd be like, why aren't you doing this?
Yeah, so I think that's the main problem with Deadlock. Like, if we were still in a Neon Raze meta, Deadlock would be sick.
Yeah.
And we just happen to be in a meta where there's like 4 characters that have teleports that are
and another one coming,
including Waylay, right? And it just becomes impossible to use her utility correctly. Sage, I think, is a little bit different, a little bit more unique in that, because the barrier fully blocks, including bullets and vision, you have more opportunities, and also creates terrain for you to play on top of. And is actually, in my opinion, kind of a decent counter to Yoru, because you can block the teleport, or if they're ulting, then you can just wall off the rest of their team and slow the rest of their team, and then the Yoru is just alone doing stuff, and you can kind of like ruin that. So,
or if he's ulting alone and you wall the Yoru off, he just can't.
Then he just wastes his ult. Exactly. So I think Sage will probably continue to see some play. I was pretty surprised. I mean, it's mostly Fnatic that was playing it on Ascent, but I was pretty surprised at how much Sage Ascent was being played. I don't necessarily think that's that great, but I can see why teams are doing it. But yeah, I mean, I think with the return of Split next year, we'll probably see some Sage being played. We may even see some Deadlock, because it's one of Deadlock's better maps. And Pearl, maybe even some Sage there. It's been played in the past. I think they're kind of going in the right direction with Sage. Like the cast range increase is kind of nuts, especially for like res and stuff. And it's hard to just speculate on 2026, just because who knows what the game is going to look like as far as like,
well, they've
and
hinted at a big patch is coming our way. So I'm all down for the way. Like, I want a harbor buff, the likes of the Viper buff in 2021. Give me the most broken fucking harbor, and someone out there, the one harbor player in ranked, is gonna fucking pop off and go from gold 3 to immortal 3 and like that, just because they're the only person who can play harbor. Anyway, I think we genuinely, I mean, by the sounds of it, particularly, I think we could sit here for literal 10 hours and non-stop speak about Valorant, meta, and agents, and not have a single break and be fine. But we have, our audience might not be as interested in that. So
okay, one last thing I will say is, I promise
9 hours to go,
is that Yoru.
Yes.
One of the main reasons that Yoru is problematic is that all the flash initiators essentially become irrelevant, because Yoru takes their job. Right. That's kind of what we're seeing. is he's not only one of the best duelists in the duelist jobs, he's one of the best oppers in the opera job, but he's also one of the best initiators because his flashes and his ability to take first contact with the clone and all of that stuff makes it very hard to find room in your comp for a KO, for a breach, for a gecko, etc. And so I think that's kind of the area that Riot will probably attack when they inevitably nerf it, because it's coming.
Yeah. You know what's funny about Yoru? You just got me thinking, like, watching some of the Yoru play, like, now, I still think there is a long way to go of, like, of Yoru ceiling. Like, even though he's been meta for a full year, I still feel like there's still a lot of unexplored space of, like, just even theoretically things.
We still have people throwing their first teleport with ult like 3 meters in front of them, popping their ult and teleporting 4 meters forward to save them 0.5 seconds of their ult, which is the most.
So I mean, you speak about ults. Paper Rex got worse at Yoru ults on defense. They just, for what, I have no idea why they started doing that. I'd love to ask Alex or something or whoever started doing this, but for whatever reason on Lotus, he would just start popping ults at 1 minute, no matter what the fuck had happened previously in the round. Defensive ult, even against Fnatic, who you know aren't going to be doing shit at a minute mark. He's popping ults.
Hey guys, I found them in spawn.
Yeah, they're in spawn. Guys, they're in spawn.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on. Talking about teams like Paper Rex and Fnatic. This is an interesting question, I think. Someone asked it me on the stream, and I really struggled with it, because normally I feel like there is a clear answer to these questions, but this year I'm not sure there is. And the first question is, who was the best team of 2025?
Yeah.
It's probably between two, I think. Paper X and Fnatic. Obviously NRG won champs, but I don't, the first part of the year still counts, right? And they didn't go to any other international, and so I feel like probably won't include them. And then T1, I would just simply refuse to ever include T1. Not. You could include G2 if you wanted to, if you were particularly like an Americas fan. I think you would probably want to put G2 somewhat in there. Where are you?
I think if G2 had gotten like top 5, you could maybe say it was them at champs, because they got second and they got 4th, and if they had like another top 4 or top 5, like that's a good fucking year, right? Plus like three regional champions. But yeah, I think with their 8th place, it's like you can't say that they were the best team this year. There's no way. They have no titles, and they have only one grand finals.
Like at this point, you would probably have to say that Fnatic 2 second places, if you want to count EWC as well, then 3 second places. That outweighs 1 second place, and especially because it was the first Masters as well. Like, look, I hate the 8-team Masters. I'm so fucking glad that we're getting another 12-team Masters instead, because I do genuinely think the 8-team Masters is maybe the worst idea that they've had. That is like something that they easily could have changed. Like sometimes your hands are tied, and it's like, this is what it is, right? Like, Teo releases or whatever, and it's like, it's too busted, but sometimes that happens, right? So every game, gets something sometimes that's way too strong, right? That happens. But the 12-team, we didn't need 8-team Masters. No one asked for it. No one wanted it, but we got it, and thank fuck they're changing it. And G2 come in second, and they're all Mickey Mouses. T1 won a Mickey Mouse.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, this really is a super difficult question, because like, as much as I want to give it to Fnatic, like, they didn't even make close to making the first Masters. Like, they were
they had a bad kickoff.
They were pretty mid at kickoff, and then if you go back to Paper X was terrible to start the year. Like, they were awful. They were really, really bad to start the year. So I mean, it's almost like de facto just give it to NRG because they won champions and they probably look like the best team right now. But also, they were imploding for like the first 3 months of the year. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, if you're looking at the full body of work, it probably has to be Fnatic. But I don't feel good about it.
No, it does feel a bit wrong, doesn't it, to congratulate someone who didn't win anything.
They didn't win anything. I would say at this point, just participation trophies. Just only honorable mentions. There is no best team. That's what everybody wants to. There's no best team this year. It's just a bunch of okay teams.
Yeah, but it is strange because I feel like, you know, last year there was you could have a debate last year between Genji and Heretics, but it was very clear that like it was those two and no one else was really in
Yeah,
the discussion other than those two. The year before that was obviously Fnatic. Like, they won two tournaments. Like
yep,
it was obvious Fnatic. So in the partnership era, it is a bit strange that we've ended up in a year where it's like, well, I don't feel great about any of you. Like,
yeah.
aren't you all tie for second? I don't know. And then carrying on from that, which again I think is, and this obviously goes with the theme of no team has continually been great throughout the entire year. Who has been the best player of 2025
I mean, statistically, it's Osboss by a mile, but
throughout the entire year?
yeah.
I mean, he had
Like,
a horrible Toronto. Horrible.
okay,
He was awful in
I, I,
Toronto.
I know, I know you don't
He
go
was
on
awful
Twitter,
in
but
Toronto. That counts.
I,
That's an
I know,
important part
I
of the year
know,
that he was shit in.
I understand, but statistically, it was Osboss by a mile. And if you go on my Twitter again, I've had like a bunch of tweets that are bangers right now, and you look at for the entire year, the entire VCT year, it's Osboss by a lot, and then it's Cryocells, and then I can't remember who the third one is. I don't care, but statistically for the entire year, if you go to stats on VCT, you sort by events, go to Valorant Champions Tour 2025, and you put a minimum rounds of like 600, which is basically a full season. It excludes like the outliers because of sample size. It's Ospas.
So you would say that Aspas is your player of the year. It's not going to be a popular take. The people won't like it.
People are gonna want to give it to like something because he had like a period where he was
But
insanely good.
but he also
But
had.
but he also fell off when it mattered the most at
I don't think he
Champions.
was their best player for a good part of the year though. See, because
And
I think Paper Rex's best player this year over the entire year would probably be Forsaken.
yeah, I would agree with that.
So I feel like he would be my nomination from Paper Rex. From Fnatic, I think I'd go Kayak
Yes, I would
if
agree with
if
that.
I was to pick one of their players.
Yep.
And
How about
then
the champions?
from NRG, I mean that's the thing
Yeah.
though. Like who am I picking?
They only
Like
had
Raw? Yeah,
half a season
like
of
you
being
can't,
good. Yeah.
you almost can't pick them because it's so strange. Because
The
like
reason I'll say Ospas is simply because if Ospas was not on MIBR, they would be an 0-9 team or 0-12 or whatever the fuck. With Ospas on
see
their team,
you this
they were relevant enough to make a run at champions.
this
And they were a top 3 team to start the year. They had their down period, but then at the end of the year, they were still like a top 4 team.
see now this is an interesting debate, right? Because this is like, if you're talking about who is the most valuable player, like if you interpret those words literally, I think you're right that Aspas for MIBR, if you took him off the team, they would be nowhere near as good as they are, right? This is
Yeah.
like I mean, the NFL fans will be with me here. This is like Joe Burrow on the Bengals, because Joe Burrow is an insanely good quarterback, and he's injured right now, and their team is completely dog shit. It is unbelievably bad. But he himself manages to win them like 9 games if he's healthy, and they go 9-8. And it's like, oh well, they aren't that good, so he's not the MVP. But he is the MVP because without him, they might not win a game the rest of the year, right? Like they're dog shit. So
Sure.
that's I get where you're coming from there, but I feel like the people won't have it. The people need the MVP to be Josh Allen, who's also on a good team and is
Okay.
therefore the MVP. So I'm gonna give
I'm
it
gonna
to
link
Forsaken.
you. I'm
Go
gonna
on.
link you a screen. I'm gonna link you a screenshot of the top 10 players by VLR rating for the entire year with 600 rounds minimum
Okay,
played,
I'm going to open it. I'm going
and it's gonna
to
surprise you
zoom
that
in.
Forsaken is nowhere to be seen.
Let's take a look, shall we? Let's take a look. So, I mean, what? So you think Cryo was the second best player of 2025?
No.
Well, you do because you sent me this. Now
Well,
now
okay.
here we go. Trent, I think, is an interesting one because I did think
That
about
I was
bringing
gonna
up
say.
Trent.
I think Trent is an interesting potential person to talk about just because the amount of rounds, the crazy impact, like. But again, G2. I don't know this. This year has been very, very difficult to
Yeah.
kind of separate.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, look, if I was to argue back at you about Aspas, I would say that Trent has another 600 rounds played, isn't that far off in rating, and was on
Yep.
a more successful team. So
Yep.
why not give it to Trent, judging by your...
I mean, sure, give it to Trent.
Okay,
And
well,
then
okay.
everybody in the comments will say, Teo Merchant one trick. He's not very
But
good.
well,
Get
yeah,
him
to
out
the
of the
people who
league.
would say Teo Merchant to Trent, I would say, yeah, this was the Teo meta year. What the hell? Yeah, Ye was the best player in the world when Chamber was the meta. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like, obviously, yeah, you abused the broken agent the best. Congrats, you're the player of the year. That is a
Yep.
tough one, though. That is a very tough question, isn't it? Who to put as the
Yeah, I mean, and
MVP of the year?
there's other people in here that I would, potentially look at too, like Jemkin. Like Jemkin has some pretty incredible stats. He's in the top
Yeah,
10. Like he was really, really good this year.
you know what I love about this
Tico,
the most? I love that it
what's
says
that?
Jemkin and it's got Brim here instead of Yoru. For probably like one game of Brim that he played, maybe. And
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I mean, it is very, very nuts just how hard it is to come up with a top team and a top player this year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very difficult. Very difficult. And so there you go. Well, so you're committing to your answer of Aspas. See, I kind of want to say Trent now, if I'm honest, though. I do kind of want to
Yeah.
say Trent.
I wouldn't
But
fight you on that.
people will, the people will, though. The people will hate me, but yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to talking about something new. You haven't got to play the new
Wait,
agent.
wait, wait,
Oh,
wait.
go on.
I gotta give it to Brock because he had the lowest headshot percentage in the entire VCT for the entire year. And he was the finals MVP.
I mean, I'm gonna make a video on Brock and him abusing the Odin because, again, this is another thing that I don't appreciate when people are like low skill. Like, if no one else can do it,
Yeah.
then that doesn't make it low skill, does it? Because everyone would do it if it was low skill.
I mean, have you run around with an Odin? It's fucking hard to play with. Like, it really is.
Yes, I have played with an Odin before, and yes, I mean I'm bad at with every gun, but you know I'm also bad with the Odin. So
Yeah.
let's talk though about maybe maybe an agent. I doubt Brock will play this agent much, but maybe Scuba will. Well, is Scuba this kind of Scuba agent? I'm not even sure if it is, to be honest. It's a Leaf agent, I'll tell you that much. It definitely feels like a Leaf agent. New Sentinel called Veto. You haven't got to play around with it yet, have you?
I have.
You have? Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me then what your thoughts are on the new agent. Let's do a quick summary and then we'll kind of dive into it a bit more.
Sure. So, I guess the cliff notes are individually, he has a couple very potentially broken abilities, being the signature. Uh, People would refer to it as like a trophy system, which
Mm-hmm.
is like a military term for shooting down incoming projectiles, and his ultimate. I think those are probably the two most broken parts about his kit. If he just had those two and his other abilities were kind of meh, I would think that he's like okay, like playable, pretty good, but maybe not like game breaking. But I think the fact that they have those two very, very strong abilities that change how people are going to have to interpret the game, because the ult like dodges recons. So it's like, oh shit, the site's clear. Never mind, I'm dead, which is super fucked. Um, and then the fact that certain characters are essentially unplayable in the way that you currently play them. Like you actually cannot play Gecko because as soon as you make noise of, hey, I'm throwing Dizzy, the whatever the interceptor comes
Yep.
out, all of your utility useless, completely useless. So the fact that they gave him these two very strong things that make you change how you're thinking and playing the game, but then they also gave him a better version of Chambers teleport. I don't care what people say. Okay, so a little bit different. It's not instantaneous, so you can't like do like this super aggressive walk down instant like I'm in the open Chamber teleports.
Yep.
But you can essentially take all of the angles that Chamber and Yoru would like to take and play them just like that, where like you duck behind a wall, teleport out. The fact that they gave him two of those that can also kind of function like an Omen teleport. So he's got like essentially characteristics of 3 different very powerful agents, Yoru, Chamber, and Omen, in one ability. And then on top of that, they gave him the grenade threw me for a loop because I thought it was a uh like a molly, so you'd throw it and then you had to like trigger it on time. But the fact that it's
No.
actually a trip as well with global range is insane. Like, so you have flank watch, you've got push stall because it's a you've got combo potential in the trip. You've got global range on information, passive information. You've got Omen slash Chamber slash Yoru teleport potential, 2 of them. And then on top of that, you have 2 completely broken abilities that change how people have to interpret the game. That is too much to have in one character. And I think he's going to make it very, very hard to not play him on 100% of the maps going forward in 2026 unless they nerf him.
Interesting. I don't agree. I
That's
don't
fine.
agree. Where I'm at right now with this agent is I still think he's good. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he's dog shit, not gonna get played. But in my head now, if they don't and they almost certainly will nerf Yoru. But if they didn't nerf Yoru, I don't think he would be played that much, to be honest. Because I think Yoru right now is stronger than he would be personally, and I think that then you wouldn't need like the extra TPs and all that stuff. You would prefer to have a Vice who's giving you more stall. You'd prefer to have that Sentinel slot doing something else potentially, and you could with Yoru.
Does Vice really give you more stall though?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that the interceptor thing will be like, I think it'll be more hard to time. Like you're right. If you're playing Gecko, yeah, that's a problem. But there are some agents that, like, if you're playing against a Breach, that interceptor doesn't do shit. It doesn't counter any of his abilities. All of the abilities still hit you exactly as they would otherwise. The ult, I agree, is a good ult. I don't get why it costs 7. That seems like a bit of a...
The fact that it's 7 and it lasts for an entire round
Yeah,
is brain dead. Like, it needs to be
doesn't
one of
make
those
any
things
sense.
where it's like, hey, they're using utility on me. I'm popping my invincibility and I can counterplay this one hit and then it's gone.
That would make more sense.
15 seconds
or it needs to cost more than that. Yeah, I don't really get the ult why they cost it at 7.
Because now you just pop it at the beginning of the round, and for the rest of the round, you have fucking regeneration, which is insane. And then you can't be flashed, you can't be reconned. It just makes it lasts too long. Like, make it a reactive cast, and then that's
I definitely agree with that. But in general, my take has always been that ults matter the least in terms of how good of an agent is. Anyway, like, they just do. You don't have them most rounds, so they just matter less for how good an agent is. The trap, I think, is fine. I mean, it's a pretty good trap. Again, it is kind of like, what? So we've got this Killjoy one that just makes you vulnerable, and then here's one that decays you and traps you in a location for like a while. Like, what are we doing in a sense?
And it has the same projectile as a Viper Orb, so you can just throw it. Like,
you can throw it across the map as well. Yeah, and Killjoy has a range restriction. So yeah, that definitely is. I think it is a good agent. And I think if Yoru gets nerfed, sizably, which he probably will, then I agree this agent probably at that point would see a lot of play, because then you'll have more of a space of doing the kind of double TP, the TPs just become better, because then you don't potentially have another agent who can do that in your comp. So it makes it more unique, and it makes it more of a threat than otherwise it would be. I think the interceptor stuff, and like, my main take with this agent is that I don't like it. The reason I don't like this agent is because it counters different agents at different levels. And that's just shit, right? Like, oh, I want to play Gecko, but I can't because you're playing this agent. I don't get to see that you're picking that agent until I'm already in the game.
Yeah.
So, like, what the fuck are we doing?
I think this agent might get more complaints than any other agent in the game in ranked, because
it makes no sense.
There's going to be so many, and you know how ranked is. Like, people don't play for a month, they come back, oh, what does this agent do? Why is my flash not working? Oh, this game fucking sucks, right?
Yeah.
I think he's going to be one of the most feels bad agents that we've ever had. Maybe the most feels bad agent. where like the casual player is going to be like, well, I can't even play the game anymore, right? Like they come in, they play like 5 games of ranked a month. They pick their favorite agent, Gecko, Sky, whatever the fuck. I can't use any of my abilities, okay? And then when I use my Hawk to clear something and he's in ult form and I flash, oh, there's nobody there. I run up with my knife out because I'm bad and I just get one tapped by somebody. And it's like, why didn't my thing scan? Well, it's because I don't play the game that much, and now there's an agent that makes me so none of my shit that I've learned over the last 5 years makes any sense. And yeah, you can disagree whether you think it's going to be super powerful. I will say there's basically like 4 traits that make an agent good, and you can see this in every single meta that's ever happened. Number 1, they're hybrid, meaning that they do multiple agents' job at any given time. Number 2, they have an escape mechanism. Number 3, they have some sort of like fight taking initiating potential. And honestly, I can't remember what number 4 is, but if you look at like the top 5 agents for champs, you'll see like, oh, it's a recon. He doesn't have recon, but he has information gathering with the trip. So he basically fills every single bucket of like, this is an agent that will be played in pro.
No, I agree. He will get played in pro. I think that let me talk about what I think are some of the downsides, not just like the if Yoru stays good. Another problem that I see, because I think I've interpreted the TPs a bit different to most people that I've seen, is that, like you said, it's not a chamber TP. It's not like a get out of jail free card all the time. Like you can't be out in the open. You have to have a space to cover, because the TP itself is quite slow, and you have to actually aim at where your TP is, to actually do it. So, most of the time it's going to be behind you, so you have to have some cover to turn around, and do it and get through the animation, right? Like if you're just out in the open and a neon runs at you, I mean, you're just going to die like 100% of the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just Omen or Yoru teleport. It's like the same mechanics as those.
It's quite a bit worse than a Yoru TP though, because again, Yoru you can be wherever you want. Here you've got a range, you have to be behind some cover. Like I say, like a Yoru, you can fucking walk the whole map if you want to and get out.
Yeah, but the range is huge. It's like the range is huge. It's bigger than Chamber's teleport circle.
Is it? Isn't it the same now?
No, it's bigger than Chamber's teleport circle.
Is it? Oh, I thought it was the same.
Yeah, and you don't have to be on the ground like Chamber's teleport. You can literally jump off the map on Abyss and teleport.
You can jump, but again, you have to. Yeah, I made this mistake doing this on Abyss, where you try and aim at it, but because you're falling, you don't aim correctly and just fall to your death.
Yeah, well, you're a bot. So.
Yeah, I know, but I thought it was funny. I thought it was so funny. Anyway, fuck, what else was I going? Oh yeah, the other thing is as well, which again, sometimes I think when we look at these Sentinels, like attack side. And I know he's a Sentinel, so you're not expecting like the world on attack side. But I don't think he offers that much on the attack side. Particularly on certain maps. I think on certain maps he'll be fine on the attack side. Like I think Bind is going to be a super strong map for him. I think I think that, and this is what's interesting about him for me when I was thinking about what maps is he going to get played on. Well, the more like if you take Bind as a good example, right? The agents who you see a lot of play on Bind, Sky, Gecko, Fade, Raze, Yoru, he destroys them with his Interceptor, right? Yeah. They're all good agents for the Interceptor. But on other maps, maybe like an Abyss or whatever, there's less of those agents that are, like definitely you're going to counter every single thing that they do. Maybe, maybe you run into a chamber and it's like the chamber doesn't give a fuck, about any of your shit, or like there are certain agents, it doesn't destroy like a Vice Wall or anything like that, right? Like, there are certain agents that it does worse against, which again is the main reason I hate this agent. I hate this agent because it says it's like it feels League of Legends. It's what it feels like. It feels like here's a niche counter pick, to what my opponent is playing in this lane, type shit. Not which obviously doesn't make any sense in Valorant because there are no lanes. But
yes, but what I will say is it does again. It opens up something that people are still not doing. But let's say you have a strategy where you play Chamber Vice, right? Yep. Let's say you take the Ascent comp that Fnatic was running, right? Play Chamber Vice, and you know that your opponent next week is a team that likes to play Sky Gecko on Ascent for whatever reason. Okay, swap the Chamber out, put this guy in.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
right?
And yeah, that
Just
would be
makes their
super
game
strong.
way harder to play,
Yeah,
which is
that.
cool.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is cool. That is cool for you doing it. It's not cool for them.
Yeah,
Which again, in ranked, that's not how, you don't get VODs to study what your opponent is playing and like, oh, I can't play Gecko because they're gonna play. In ranked, you're just gonna get fucked, and that's not good.
true,
That's not fun. You're just gonna turn up
true.
and get fucked.
I do agree that he's going to be an incredibly feels bad agent in ranked. Like
Yeah.
he's going to turn a lot of people off to the game.
But one of the things that again I kind of interpreted the TPs a little bit different, more as a great rotation tool as well, right? So
Yeah,
like again, especially in ranked, because that I've found some setups that you can do that are still like setups that you would do normally on certain maps, like on Corrode, for instance. There's some interesting ones. On Pearl, there's some interesting ones where you still have a very normal setup of like I can play this aggressive angle and then TP away, but then your second TP is on the other side of the map that you can then just TP to as well.
like speeds up the rotation
And yeah,
timing
you
a
just
lot.
instant rotate to the other side of the map if they do just go there. So
Yeah.
I agree that definitely is a lot to this agent, but I was going through the maps and I was still like, is this better than Cypher on Sunset? Like when I was thinking about that map, and I was like, I don't know, because Cypher on Sunset is pretty good, or it's like this is better than Vice on Lotus or whatever, and I was like, I don't know, like I still thought there was, particularly between Cypher and Vice, like on the maps where they are good, I still kind of thought like, is he definitely better than them? And I was coming away, I was like, I don't know. Particularly to me, if you're playing Yoru, I think you would stick with Vice on like a Lotus, for instance. Am I crazy?
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think so. Basically, I think you were touching on sort of like the counter picking aspect of him being kind of one of the main reasons that you might play him, like picking him on bind because everybody plays agents that have like a lot of throwable utility. I would also, and this is maybe like giving away too much of my secret sauce of how I think about agents, but if you look at each one of his abilities and you sort of like one-to-one it with another character's abilities, like for example, one of the reasons that I really like playing Vice on bind is because Vice does a lot of what Sky did with like the info checking on B long with the flash, right? And allows you to kind of like clear hookah with your flash and like search for information. Same kind of play patterns as Sky. So it's like it gives you Sky value while also giving you Sentinel value. And so I think with this character, a lot of places where you might play, a waylay or a chamber that want to like walk up aggressively into like a crazy position that you normally can't play with a teleport escape, that's something that you can do with this character. I want to have a trip that watches an area. Okay, so maybe I would play a chamber there instead. Maybe I would play Killjoy there instead. And in this case, I'll just play him because he gives me the same value. I want the ability to fade seize combo, but I don't want to play a fade because I'd rather play a Sova or something else. Okay, well I can integrate that fade seize combo into my game plan now because I have the fade seize built into the trip. That's sort of how I'm looking at it. Is like it would be nice to play this agent for this ability. I would nice to be play this agent for this ability. I don't actually want to play those agents because I want to play a different comp. But if I can put one agent in that gives me those tools, then all of a sudden it opens up a lot of pathways for me and play patterns for stuff that I want to have access to, but don't necessarily want to play the agent because I want to play something else. So for me, it's just the fact that he has pieces of like 4 different agents in one that gives you a huge amount of options, and that is probably going to be too many options. Kind of how like Yoru deleted all of the flash initiators from the meta because his flashes are, good enough to do the flash initiator role while also playing duelist. I think that's kind of where the problems arise, and that's where sort of like the meta takeover happens. He's not Teo, that's just like the numbers are too big. It's the fact that he does too many things, and so he's going to just become like the next Omen, the next Yoru, in my opinion.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, the more it's starting to convince me a little bit. I'm sticking with for now. I'm gonna stick with where I'm at. I mean, I agree that there are some stupid stuff about like the ult does make no sense. Like why that is either 7 cost or doesn't have some kind of timer on it really doesn't make, like I don't know what they were thinking there, but that seems like quite an easy obvious fix. We saw this with Vice. I mean, if you remember, Vice came out the start like the end of, you know, champs last year. So we also got a new Sentinel. And, you know, by the time we got to, you know, 2025 starting with kickoff and stuff, you know, by that point they had already nerfed the Vice War. They had changed how the Thorns work quite significantly, to be honest. So, you know, they'd already changed some stuff. So it wouldn't shock me if by the time we actually get to 2026 VCT starting, you know, that the ult does
Yeah,
have a time limit on it. You know,
we're gonna have off-season events to show how insane
yeah,
he
yeah,
is.
yeah.
And, yeah.
Like it will, if it is a problem, then probably. But like that's the thing with Teo, right? Teo came out at the start of the year, so the first testing ground was, hey, this thing in kickoff,
Yep.
and it was like, oh well, this is a problem.
Yeah.
Pretty quick. Speaking
Yeah.
of 2026, let's talk about some things that are changing for 2026, shall we? Let's start off with some news that came down hot off the presses today. You can see that I am not on Twitter because it's telling me to log in or sign up. But Gentle Mates have taken the place of Koi following an extensive selection process. Elevated, give me your shocked reaction.
Wow. Yeah.
Your thoughts on Gentle Mates joining EMEA?
I think my main thoughts are just I sort of feel / wonder how they are dealing with the players that they had. Like my immediate thought is just sort of like, did the players / coaches that were maybe under contract get slightly screwed over by this? Because or maybe not, because they probably only had their contract through this season. And
Yeah.
anyway, obviously the org has been one of the more exciting orgs in EMEA, even though their results have not been great. Like everybody knows that esports is a marketing vehicle for Riot. And so the more eyeballs, the more hype, the more fan engagement, the better. And Gentle Mates brings all of that. That's why they're selected. And apparently they also are supposedly running their business in like an ethical and good way, which is the other sort of two things. Like if you have lots of fans and you run your business well, Riot will select you for these things basically. And then they'll let you build your team, you know, over the next couple of years to have good results.
Yep. I mean, it is funny that, you know, instantly when this was all announced about Koi, the first thing was, we think that they're just trying to kick us out to get Gentle Mates back in because they just want them in the league again. And yeah, here we are. So yeah, I do think that's funny. But I also wanted to talk more about the other changes that they revealed a while back now about 2026. First thing, any reaction to Santiago, Shanghai, London?
I think it's all cool. I love the fact that they're giving a Masters to South America. I think that's very important to continue to foster that section of like the ecosystem. Going to Shanghai obviously makes sense just because they're doing like, you know, each host city basically gets champs in a rotation. And then London is cool. I mean, we've got a lot of talent, not like talented players because there's not very many of those, but there's a lot of talent that comes from the UK. And I'm always a big fan of like good sports culture places getting events in esports because like we saw it with Paris, you know, like the crowd was great. We've seen it, you know, anytime we go to a place that has like a football culture, it's like usually the crowds are really good. I'm a little sad that we're not going like back to Reykjavik, but it doesn't really make sense to go to Reykjavik necessarily.
No, unless you want like 5 people turning up, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think all the places make sense and are cool.
I'll certainly be excited for London. I mean, normally, by the way, it's funny. Like, I watched Josh and Bren, you know, talk to Leo on Plat Chat as well about, you know, it going to London, and like neither of them are from London, and I'm not from London either. And like, so to an outsider who's not from the UK, it's like, oh, Masters is going to London. You must be so excited. Like, you know, you're gonna have so much fun. You know, it's like, yeah, people who don't live in London like tend to not like London. Like there's a reason, like, you know, like like I hate London. I really, really do hate London.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate that city so much, but I will be forced to go there.
Is there any large city in the UK that you would like to have it in? Or is it just cities in the UK are all shit?
I mean, the cities in the UK I would say London is kind of its own separate thing. Like London has, Greater London is like, I don't know, 10 million people or whatever.
Right.
The
It's like a
next
hyper
the
metropolis. Yeah.
next one is like
Yeah.
1 and a bit million, maybe, like in Manchester and Birmingham. And I've lived in
Right.
Birmingham. Definitely don't put it in Birmingham. Most people in Birmingham would tell you don't put it in Birmingham. Let's put it this way. In Birmingham, there has been a strike from the bin men. So they haven't been collecting rubbish there for,
Trash.
yeah, the trash hasn't been taken out for probably about 6 months at this point, I think,
Oh,
because
Jesus.
they've been on strike the whole time. So yeah,
Okay.
that's where they are in Birmingham. And also the county council in Birmingham is bankrupt. So yeah, I wouldn't put it anywhere else necessarily in the UK.
Okay.
The best city in the UK, if you're wondering, that I've been to, I'd say is probably Edinburgh, if you're wondering. But there you go. Anyway, moving on. There are other things to talk about. Less about the UK tourism board. Let's talk about this, because this is the big one. The
Yeah.
fact that tier 2 teams can make it to champs. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. As a fan of the game, as a spectator, this is amazing because it makes sense. Like every year, we get tier 2 players who come up and are clearly as good, if not
Scuba
better, than a lot of
Brawl.
the tier 1 players. Yep. So this is great for that. As if I put on my capitalist business owner hat, I think this is not a good thing.
Ooh, go
And
on.
the reason for that is because it's going to really depend on like what the numbers are. Um, I think in some sense it could be great for tier 2 teams because like you're playing through challengers. Obviously, challengers is a wasteland in terms of like it's just dumping money into a pit, letting it on fire, stamping it out, letting it on fire again. That's what tier 2 is. Um, then your reward is that you get a contract with Riot. So they give you, $1 million to run your team for the next year if you win Ascension. This is like I get into champs and then what?
Hmm.
Like, so if I win champs, then sure, I get a bunch of money and yes, I get the skin revenue. I guess I'm just kind of curious, like, what is the actual like what are the numbers? Um and what does this mean for the future of the league, right? I've are we going to less teams in the league? It's that we've heard rumors about that, right? In 2027 there will be less teams in the league, more Ascension teams. I don't know, like I don't know what's going to happen. um but I think a lot of teams, like, initially it was okay, we're gonna burn money in tier 2 because we can get a 2-year contract with Riot, which is maybe going to give us enough runway in terms of money to be able to then build an operation that can sustain itself for like the next couple of years, even if we get kicked back out of the league. Then it becomes okay, well, you only get 1 year of guaranteed stipend from Riot. So is that really enough? It was not enough for a lot of teams, and that's why a lot of teams pulled out of tier 2. Now it's you get 0 years of stipend, right? So we're kind of pulling back even more from what is going to be guaranteed to you. The trade-off is that yes, you get it immediately, right? Because once you get to champs, then you get like the skin money. But I guess there's no guarantees afterwards. Like I guess I don't really know enough details at this point to say whether I should be excited as a business owner or not. My guess is probably not, but also because I guess the intent is yes to make it more open, hope that more people take a chance on tier 2 because now they can immediately get in and potentially win a championship if you believe in that. Um but and also like because another big part of the whole like ascension process is when you ascend, you now have to move your organization
Hmm.
to a new city, which has a huge amount of costs. And a lot of times, a lot of your like Riot stipend is literally just instantly sunk into rent and apartments and all this stuff, right? Of moving your operation. So now you don't necessarily have to do that. But then, like, what happens afterwards? What happens after? Let's say you do as a tier 2 org, spend money, you make champs, sure, you get your skin money. Then what? am I just back to tier 2 and
Yeah.
again, playing in these like 1,000 viewer tournaments for 8 months and then hoping to get to champions again, or do I actually get next year's exposure? Right? I think that next year's exposure is a really important thing, because if it's just like this one super peak, okay, I got 10th at champions, I got some skin money, which maybe helps me run my business for a little bit longer, but I don't get the guaranteed exposure of being in a league. I can't sell sponsorships again, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's very hard for me to promise sponsors, yeah, well, I made champs and, we'll get some more viewers and fans watching our games, but it's not going to be, 1.5 million. It's not going to be Own a Pixel yelling Voss over my team, right? Next year. We're not getting that.
Yeah.
We have no guarantees for anything. So I think it's still going to be pretty hard for tier 2 to be justified, like as an investment.
Yeah. You know what? I think that they might somewhat like when this was announced, my first kind of thought of where this is going is not just that like, oh, they're gonna change somewhat the form. I think they might do away with almost the whole thing, and the way that they'll get like the bigger orgs to agree to it, like your PaperX Fanatics, your Sentinels, the orgs that in Valorant people like care about. The way that they get them kind of on board is, that kind of like power rankings thing that they made, like the like power, or like almost like an elo thing that they made for the power rankings.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if they don't do almost like a college football style riot, ranks these teams, and if you're in the top X amount of teams, then you get to, start, in like the normal kickoff, whatever tournament to qualify for the Masters and Champs that it is. But then the other teams, your lower down teams, you've got to play in some kind of online qualifier or whatever, to make it there at the start. Right, so there almost is like there is no technically guaranteed spots, but Riot says to
Yeah.
Fnatic and Sentinels like, wink, wink, you will be, because we'll put you on the, you'll be in the top 15 teams or whatever, and so you'll get your spot there guaranteed. It's just for the teams, the struggling orgs that maybe Riot feels don't bring, that much, because at the end of the day, like if you think about it from Riot's perspective, you've got 10 partnership teams in each region. How many of them like actually bring a lot to the league?
Yeah.
It's probably less than half, really. That if you ship them out for some
like
other name,
four or five.
yeah,
4 or 5
if you
maybe.
ship them out for some other name, would most people care? Obviously, you've got the people like us who will just watch Valorant games, right? And like the people that watch my channel in particular, like that, we're just Valorant watchers. Doesn't matter. Like the team name doesn't matter, right? And then for half the teams, maybe the team name does matter and they bring in extra viewers. And then for the other half, it's like, well, like if you replace Furia with some other Brazilian team, would the Brazilian fans care? Like
Probably not.
would they care? No, right? Like, and that is the thing, I think. And I think that if you view it from that perspective, like it would make almost more sense to say like, well, yeah, let's just guarantee the spots for the teams that actually matter and let everyone else fight out for it, and have a scrap. I always thought, by the way, that the way that I would have ran Ascension instead, and when Premiere came out, I almost thought that this might be the direction they're going in, is to almost have the first Masters be like a fully open to anyone, and you have like your partnership teams, but Ascension is that, right? And it's also a qualification for the first Masters, and it's like tight, and literally anyone can enter. You and your 5 friends can enter if you want, and we'll run that tournament, they're all online, and then whoever the top 2 are, they then go to the lock-in, they then go to kickoff, and they get the chance to play, and they are essentially your Ascension teams for that year, right? Like I thought that would be an interesting way of doing it, but I guess they went with a more structured format. But
Yeah,
it's gonna be interesting.
There's other esports that have like PUBG is an example.
Yeah.
Where they have like these global partner teams.
Yeah.
And those teams are like basically auto qualified to like the main tournaments.
Yeah.
And then everything else is like an open qualification sort of system. So maybe they'll go in that direction. Obviously, that's really great for the teams that get the auto quals, and continue to have their skins in the game and stuff like that,
Yep.
it's really shit for everybody else. But at the end of the day, it's a business, and Riot is going to do whatever is going to make their profit margin as high as possible. And so it does make sense from a business perspective to be like, well, let's just have like the 15 teams that sell the most bundles be our teams that get the bundles in the game, and then everybody else can just kind of like try to make it to the tournaments that have maybe bigger prize pools, because we don't have to run as many studio games. And then they'll get a chance to get like, and to be perfectly honest, it may be one of those things where Riot's like, you know what, screw the leagues, right? Let's just have Masters tournaments with open qualifiers like we did at the beginning, and we'll just sell a Masters skin. And we get more money that way because everybody's going to want to buy the Masters skin. And we only make the skins for the 15 teams that actually sell bundles. And then we'll just have 3 sort of like crowd-funded skins that also, fund the prize pools. And then if you make it to a Masters through the open qualification, awesome. Now you get a big payday, but the rest of the year you have no money. So again, I think it's like, if they were to do that, it would be really good for like those global partner teams, the Sentinels, the Fnatics, etc. It'd be really bad for everybody else. But also it would probably be really good for Riot. So
can I just say,
we'll see.
You're fucking, by the way, Riot, how have you not had this idea? You're cooking with master skins. How have I never thought about that? It's so obvious. Have master skins, and you can do, like, obviously the champ skin is always like a Phantom or Vandal. Like, you can do an op skin. You can do, an Odin, like, imagine a Brock Odin skin, that like comes into the game for the next Masters. So fucking obvious. Also, purple, dope color. Like, just obvious. That would go so sick. And imagine if, like, whoever then won that tournament, you can have, like, a little pattern of, like, their logo or whatever, over the skin as well as, like, an upgrade for it. Like, there's just so obvious. And then, like, the whole year has maybe, like, a theme that, and then you can buy all of it together for champs if you want, right? Of, like, you buy the champs and the Masters one all in a bundle at the end of the year. Right, what are we doing here? This is so obvious, man.
Hire me.
This is so fucking obvious. What the like? That's so obvious, and it's such an easy win as well. All you got to do is make one skin. How hard can it be? How hard can it be to make 2 extra skins a year, right? It can't be that hard. But thankfully, they are going back to 12 teams Masters, and that's all that I really give a shit about, because holy fuck, what a dub. But anyway, whatever the future holds, and I think we are gonna, they've kind of teased, like, that we're gonna find out some, apparently there's a big patch coming. That's gonna be cool.
Yeah, in like 5 days or something like that. 6 days.
Maybe something like that. We'll see. Rumors about 2027, I'm sure will, ramp up, and they're gonna probably have to tell us. I would say latest by like midway through next year, we're probably gonna find out, what the fuck is gonna happen for 2027, because people are gonna need to know. But Elevated, it's been a pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure. At first I was going through the first couple of topics, and I was like, gosh, we're only 20 minutes in here. This might be a bit of a short one. Nope. No,
and you just let me talk.
Then we started talking about meta, and then here we are, an hour 43 in. But thank you for being here so much. It's been a pleasure as always. Anything to say?
Yes, sir. No, just thanks for having me on. I'm excited for the future of Valorant esports, whatever happens. But also a little bit, it's always a little bit worrying. I feel like esports is like, as cool as Valorant has been and as amazing as it's been, it's like esports is just never stable. I don't know.
We're on a treadmill that's like going slightly too fast. Like, and we're constantly trying to just keep up with it. And it's like, at some point, I'm going to fall here. At some point, my legs are going to give up. And they aren't going to be able to carry me. Yeah. But, well, on that bright, cheery note, let's end the show. Thank you for all watching this episode of Cosmic Divide. Hope you all enjoyed it. Have a nice day.